Let's take a look at the preliminary Belgian World Cup squad of 28 players and see where they were 4 years ago. Matsels. It's strange to think that Matsels is the only player on the Newcastle books. It looks like he's off to the World Cup, and yet the Geordies are practically begging Anderlecht to chug his passport into a shredder. The man with the wrists made of confetti and reflexes that could rival a three-legged badger was a promising 22-year-old at Belgian club Ghent in 2014. He'd be a real gentleman if he just never came back to Newcastle. CIMAN MIGNOLET. Another lad who used to play in the northeast, CIMAN MIGNOLET still probably gets laughed at for conceding 5 at St James's Park in the Time Weir derby. 4 years ago, the Liverpool benchwarmer just completed his first season at Anfield, terrifying his own supporters to within an inch of their lives. THIBAUT COURTOIS. 4 years ago, THIBAUT COURTOIS was completing a 3-year loan stint at Atletico Madrid, helping knock out parent club Chelsea on the way to the Champions League final. Oh, and he also won the La Liga title and was awarded best goalkeeper in Spain. KOEN CASTEELS. The 25-year-old Wolfsburg goalkeeper is likely to miss out on a trip to Russia. The man has never even been capped. His time will come, assuming that Courtois gets hit by a bus within the next 5 years or something. 4 years ago, he was at Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga. Thomas Meunier. Thomas Meunier is at PSG these days, but 4 years ago he was a 22-year-old up-and-coming right-back at Club Bruges and just missed out on a World Cup spot. Laurent CIMAN. Laurent CIMAN is a frightening reminder that while Belgium have a nice fresh coat of paint across their starting 11 and bench, Christ, you don't want to look underneath. CIMAN is one of the dents in the Ferrari, a 32-year-old fullback at Los Angeles FC in a country where the chapter on defending was briefly skimmed by the budding footballers. 4 years ago, CIMAN was at Standard Liège. How he's in this squad, I don't know. Jan Vertonghen. Jan Vertonghen seems like he's been at Spurs forever, but 4 years ago that man had 1 foot out the door. The club were in a mess, playing Soldado up front, getting battered 5-0 at home, and employing the likes of Tim Sherwood as some sort of managerial guru to save the day. He saved nothing, and Vertonghen kept flirting with every Champions League outfit that would give him the time of day. It never happened. Mauricio Pochettino reinvented Tottenham, and he's still there. Toby Alderweireld. One man who could be leaving Tottenham this summer is Toby Alderweireld, but 4 years ago that man was lifting the La Liga title with Atletico Madrid. Admittedly, he only played 12 times, but still. VINCENT Kompany. 4 years ago he was hoisting a Premier League title above his head before preparing to lead Belgium into a World Cup. What has changed? Thomas Vermaelen. This man's career belongs in an episode of EastEnders or something, or whatever miserable TV show people watch these days. It's just been a catalogue of despair for Vermaelen. Since signing for Arsenal back in 2009, he's been plagued by injuries, and in the summer of 2014 he was signing for Barcelona, fulfilling a lifelong dream, right? The man practically injured himself signing the contract, playing just once all season. Christian KABASELE. Average enough centre half, Christian KABASELE, the Congolese-born Watford defender, was signing for Genk in the summer of 2014. Dedryck Boyata. Dedryck Boyata is another scratch on the car. Not even a scratch, more like if someone took a sledgehammer to the windscreen. Errors strewn at Celtic in a league where your mistakes will rarely be punished. 4 years ago he was out in the cold at Man City, banging on the window and begging Pellegrini to let him in. He didn't. Jordan Lukaku. I'm not going to say nepotism is at play here because Jordan Lukaku is a decent enough left back. The Lazio fullback was at Belgian side KV Oostende in 2014. AXEL WITSELL. AXEL WITSELL is proof that even if you chuck your promise and potential into the bin for a few extra paychecks, having signed for Zenit in 2012 and then Tianjin Quanyin last year, you can still get to a few World Cups if you're good enough. 4 years ago he was out in Russia having to deal with all sorts of abuse, no doubt, in the freezing cold, but sure, I'd say that man could probably have bought the city of Petersburg by the time he was done. Marouane Fellaini. Where was Marouane Fellaini 4 years ago? Still getting criticised at Old Trafford for being a human lump. But in fairness, the man does have a purpose. Sure, didn't he score his country's first World Cup goal against Algeria? MOUSA DEMBELE. Never mind the hype surrounding the one in Scotland. Please reserve that until he starts scoring against teams that aren't Kilmarnock and Partick Thistle. Tottenham's MOUSA DEMBELE was at White Hart Lane in 2014 and was as effective as ever. Kevin De Bruyne. Gee, where was Kevin De Bruyne 4 years ago? Being told he wasn't good enough for Chelsea, a Chelsea side that were still giving Oscar weekly runouts. So off he went to sign for Wolfsburg, lit up the 2014 World Cup, and 4 years later, I'm sure everyone at Stamford Bridge has spent the past year crying into their morning porridge. Nacer Chadli. Do you think 4 years ago Nacer Chadli envisaged ending up in the Championship by the time the next World Cup rolled around? To be fair, he just flopped in his first season at White Hart Lane, 1 league goal in 24 games, come on. But his second season would provide 13 in all competitions, and now he's looking forward to Wigan away next season. Lucky man. YANNIK CARRASCO. I hope this guy feels good about himself, throwing his undoubted talent down the drain to go play for Dalian Yifang out in China. I hope he realised what a mistake he'd made when he lost 8-0 on his debut. 4 years ago he was lighting it up at Monaco. YOURI TIELEMANS. Speaking of Monaco, YOURI TIELEMANS is a 21-year-old talent. Don't go to China, lad. Don't go play against a bunch of lads who only studied the offside trap last summer. The exciting midfielder was breaking through at Anderlecht in 2014. Leander DENDONCKER. I'm sorry, but you have a ridiculous name. Leander DENDONCKER is a promising defensive midfielder at Anderlecht. 4 years ago, the then 19-year-old was still there. Adnan Januzaj. Oh god, Adnan Januzaj. 4 years ago, this kid's career was finally balanced on top of a cliff before it was immediately kicked off into the jagged rocks. Supposedly Manchester United's saviour during the 13-14 season, the reality is that anyone who displayed anything close to a bit of enthusiasm under David Moyes would have looked good. He was suddenly having about 5 countries fight over his passport, and PSG were inexplicably linked with a £40 million move. When Sunderland don't even want you anymore, you know you're in trouble. Eden Hazard. 4 years ago, Eden Hazard was pretty much doing what he's doing now. Scoring goals, ruining defenders, lighting up Stamford Bridge, and getting linked with Real Madrid. Dries Mertens. Again, Dries Mertens has not really changed much either. The 31-year-old was at Napoli in 2014. Since being converted into a striker, his stats have improved dramatically. 56 goals in his last 2 seasons, as opposed to 34 in his previous 3. Romelu Lukaku. 4 years ago, Romelu Lukaku had just completed his first season at Everton, scoring 15 goals on loan for them. It's funny, when Roberto Martinez was sacked, Lukaku admitted that he'd lost the dressing room. Have fun in Russia, boys. Christian Benteke. If this guy makes the cut to Russia, he's the luckiest guy on planet Earth, after spending the previous 9 months playing like a tree for Crystal Palace. 4 years ago, he just scored 11 goals for Aston Villa, and that was supposedly a disappointing season for him. Jesus lads, if he was doing those numbers now, that would almost be cause for an open top bus parade. Michy Batshuayi. Unwanted at Chelsea, Michy Batshuayi was a 20-year-old Standard Liège hitman who was finalising a £4.5 million transfer to Marseille in the summer of 2014. Great signing for them. Thorgan Hazard. And finally, Eden's brother. It must be difficult for Thorgan. He's a decent player. He scored 11 for Borussia Mönchengladbach this season, but whenever he goes home for Christmas dinner, I doubt he's the one whose photo gets pride of place on his parents' fridge. 4 years ago, he was on the Chelsea books. Must have been a buy one get one free sort of deal, and to show how much they valued his existence, they stuffed him out on a 2-year loan to Zulte Waregem before he'd even had a chance to say hello.